We are in a world of opportunity to create experiences that delight customers more than ever before, to make split-second business decisions smarter, to deliver impact faster. At Microsoft Azure, we believe in the power of technology to drive limitless innovation and make your vision possible with a technology partner who has the experience and expertise you can trust.
Hi there, I'm Mark Finch. I'm team leader of the mapping team at Grey Matter. Welcome to our webinar today, Getting Started with Azure Maps. In this session, Microsoft mapping expert Clements will talk you through how to set up an account in Azure, how to set up billing, and how to add Azure Maps to your Azure account. Enjoy the webinar.
Hello and welcome by this session about getting started with Azure Maps. My name is Clemens Schotte and I am the Program Manager for Azure Maps. So what is Azure Maps? Let's see what it is. Azure Maps is a geospatial services from Microsoft that can be used in web and mobile applications. So if you need a map on your website, you can definitely use Azure Maps for that. Of course, you can also create and build business applications for more advanced scenarios. So how does Azure Maps look like? So let's jump actually to my desktop. Here we have a demo of Azure Maps. It's a demo website what you can use to try Azure Maps out yourselves. So what you see is actually downtown London, where you see the Tower Bridge. You can move the map, of course. You can zoom in, zoom out. You see all the details. Of course, one of the things what you now see is that the map is really colorful. So when you have your own data and you want to overlay data on top of the map, maybe that is not the best color schema what you need. So we have different styles of map what you can use. So we have basically a really grayscale version of the map. That is really powerful when you have your own data and your data is more important than the map, of course. So if you overlay data on top of the map, then the map will not distract your data. I have an example to show you here. So for example, we have traffic information. So if I enable the traffic information, you will see there's a lot of details on top of the map. And if the underlying color scheme of the map is also colorful, let's basically switch back to the default style, you will see that it is way too colorful. So that's why we actually introduced multiple styles of the map. We have also a really dark version of the map and even a black version. So when you zoom in, you really see the roads with the traffic information really clearly. So let's go back to the default map and disable the traffic information. Because one of the other layers what we have is actually our satellite imaging. So when we go to satellite view, you can see really clearly how basically London looks like. So let's zoom in. We can see a lot of detail in the satellite image, but there is one downside. We actually don't know the name of the road anymore, what is the buildings are. So we have also a hybrid version of the map. So when you select that version, we basically have the satellite view and we have the vector tiles on top of that, so you still can see basically the Tower Bridge in this case. So of course that is just the default map what you can do. We have more options what you can do. You can rotate the map, you can basically change the pitch of the angle of the map, but we can also search, for example. Let's say that I want to search for pizza. I get all kinds of different places that has to do with pizza. You see them actually here on the map. When I basically select one of them, I get some additional details. If I can select it correctly, not there. Then I select this one. So we have both the address information. We have some additional information like the website. If there's a phone number, that will also be listed. One of the other examples that we give also the weather conditions for that current location. But we can also do routing to that same address. So let's say we're going to do routing. So the starting point was actually the Tower of London, and then we actually do a navigation by car to this location. So, but we can also do something else. We can also do routing for truck routing. And in this case, it's almost the same route, only a small detour, because that's probably easier for a truck to drive. So that are options what you can do with Azure Maps. So let's switch back to the slides. So when we talk about Azure Maps, it is of course a geospatial services from Microsoft built on top of Azure. So it is Azure native, so that also means that you get all the benefits from Azure, the Azure platform, so like scalability, but also privacy and compliancy, specifically when you're, for example, in Europe, where you have all kinds of privacy concerns, be also compliant with those regulations there. Azure Maps can be used by developers using websites, in mobile applications, actually everywhere where you need a map, you can use Azure Maps. But you can also use Azure Maps in a low-code platform, like in Power BI or Power Apps, where you don't need basically a developer, but you can basically drag and drop a map and then add your data on top of the map. Of course, that is for, let's say, a little bit more simple kind of scenarios. When you go for the full-blown version of Azure Maps, you can build everything what you need. We actually use data from data providers for Azure Maps. Of course, we use Bing Maps in our own services for Azure Maps, but we also use data from TomTom, AccuWeather, and OpenStreetMap. Data from Maxar is, for example, the satellite imaging that we use. This is only a small set of data providers what we have, because we have way more data providers, and it depends on the area and the country where you are looking to which data providers we actually use in the mix, so that you have always the best data available for the scenario what you need. If you look into the history of Microsoft and mapping, we are doing mapping already for more than 20 years. We have different names of products in the past. For example, when we talk about Bing Maps, that's basically the consumer version. We had also a version of Bing Maps for Enterprise. That's basically the successor of Azure Maps. So Azure Maps is the way forward, moving for enterprise type of mapping scenarios. So that's in a nutshell what Azure Maps is. So what kind of service do we have actually in Azure Maps? Of course, we have the base map, what I already showed you in a small demo. We do search capabilities, and search can be just an address or partly of an address. We do a point of interest search. So all that type of information that can be searched on, and then you have the longitude and latitude information to show that to the user on the map. We have satellite imaging, what I already showed you. We do routing not only for cars and trucks, but you can do it also for other vehicles. And we also support isochrones functionality. So for example, if you want to have a central point and want to know what is the distance in time in 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes, then it is not a circle around that point, but it is basically in polygon, because distance in time is everywhere the same, but the distance can be different depending on the road and how complex things are. So that's also possible with our routing API, and it can also be used actually to find out how far can you drive with an electric car. So if you want to see if all the charges that are in range of your car, then you can also use our routing engine for that. I already showed you a little bit of the traffic information what we have. We have also time zone information, and we do some geolocation. So an IP address is also actually a location. So if you want to know from the IP address in which country that person is coming from, you can also use our services for that. Of course, we have also weather information, and I will show you a little bit more of a demo later on, where you can actually use the current conditions, predictions in the future, but also basically historical weather information. And we can go back 5 years in the past, and many years even before that, depending on the location. We have all kind of historical weather information. And I already told you that we have actually also Power BI, Azure Maps integrated in Power BI and Power Apps for, let's say, the low-code type of scenarios. So looking to some of the capabilities of Azure Maps. So we have basically our base layer of the map, where you can overlay your own data on top of the base map. The base map is mainly vector based, so that means that it is always really sharp and also really tiny to send over to the client to render the map. But of course, satellite imaging is still an image, so that are basically our raster tiles. We have also a mix of those scenarios, so we have also a map style, but I will show you a little bit later on, where we have also a little bit of a height map in combination with the vector tiles. And we have also raster tiles available for our weather, radar and infrared, and it can also be animated on top of the map. So if you need a map with an animated weather forecast, that is definitely possible. And also the traffic flows on top of the map are basically also available by an API or by basically tiles that are basically updated every minute. So here I have an overview of the different styles what we have within Azure Maps. So the first one is actually the default road style, what we have with the colorful roads. But if you have your own data, then you can select one of the others. That is maybe a little bit better if you want to overlay your own data. If you look to the Terra style, that is basically still a vector tile in combination with an image, so that you get basically in depth and see where mountains are, for example. We have also two specific styles for people with disabilities. So we have a high contrast version, what you can select for people with disabilities. And we have another style that is not available in this picture, because that's basically a blanco or empty style. So if you have your own data and want to overlay that on a map, but you don't want to see any map, then you can still use our services and select actually the blank style, so that you still have all the capabilities of a mapping application, but don't have the base map visible to the end user. How do you get actually developing with Azure Maps? We have an Azure Maps web control, what can be used, just a JavaScript library that you can embed actually in your website or in your mobile device. And then you can program in JavaScript actually, and then see the map and add additional features and overlay your own data. If you don't need a map, but you want to use one of our Azure Maps backend APIs for geocoding or maybe some other services what you need from Azure Maps, we have also REST SDKs available for .NET, Java, Python and TypeScript. And they can also be used directly if you have another programming language. On top of Azure Maps, we actually also support 3D objects. So we have a WebGL layer that can be used for overlaying your own 3D objects. You can program it yourselves or use one of the third parties libraries that are available, like Babylon or DeckGL or Tree. Can be used basically for 3D objects on top of the map. And of course we have a lot of samples available, and actually I want to jump to the sample side to give you an idea what we have available and also the source code of those samples. So here does the demo website. Now we go actually to the sample website. We have about 300 samples available for all kinds of scenarios. We actually start with the 3D examples. So if I run a sample, you actually can see and experiment with that sample. So it's still an interactive map with a 3D object on it, and it is animating. But if you want to know how that was created, then you can actually go to the source code of that project. It opens a GitHub page where you can see the HTML and the JavaScript code that was needed to create this specific sample. And of course, we have way more samples, and basically this website can give you an idea what is possible actually with Azure Maps. So here I have a sample of our weather tiles on top of the Azure Maps, and it is basically real time. So there is a big storm happening here, and also here there's a lot of weather happening. So really cool to see that. Of course, we support all kinds of animations, all kinds of points on the map. A bubble layer is basically the most common type of data what you can overlay on top of a map. And you can even clutter objects to each other so that if you have a lot of data, you make it easier for a user to see where a lot of data is and maybe where less data is available. We have all kinds of controls to basically use the map. You can add your own controls to navigate on the map, or you can use the default ones that we provide to you. I already showed you that we have a style picker. You can program the style yourself hard-coded, or you can basically the user can pick a style themselves depending on what the scenario is there. Now, of course, we have so many samples, I cannot show them all, but maybe also good to know is that you can draw on top of the map. When drawing on the map, you can basically create your own polygons, but you can also save those polygons what you have created and use that later on, maybe for geofencing or for other scenarios, what is needed. Let's jump back actually to the slides. And they are here. Now, I was already showed you a little bit what we have with our search API. The most common feature for search is actually an autocomplete feature. We call that actually in our documentation fuzzy search. With the fuzzy search API, you can basically start typing, and depending on criteria like the location of the user, we can really quickly show them a kind of autocomplete functionality. You can do the autocomplete not only on addresses but also on point of interest information. Of course, when you use the normal search API, you can even get geocodes back. So, for example, if you have addresses and want to create a database of longitude and latitude information of your database of addresses, you can basically use our geocoding services for that. We even support batch geocoding if you have a massive amount of data that needs to be transformed to longitude and latitude information. And actually, we allow that you are storing longitude and latitude information from the geocoder in your own database. You only need to do it once. So that's basically a big bonus, I will say. We support structured and unstructured queries. And of course, the batch geocoder is available, including the point of interest search API. I already talked a little bit about routing. We do routing actually from point A to point B, but you can actually have multiple stops, and then we can even do the routing and optimize the best route for, let's say, 25 points in your route if that is needed. We do routing not only for cars but also for truck. For truck routing, you have additional parameters to say how big is the truck, maybe what type of goods you have in your truck, so that we can say if you have some flammable objects, maybe that's not allowed on certain roads, or maybe the truck is too heavy, etc. So that are things that are in our truck routing API available. We have also, of course, also a distance matrix that can be used actually in combination with other APIs to basically create a kind of delivery services, how to optimize what is the best point and time for picking up or delivering goods by customers, for example. I already told you that we have a route range or isochrone API that can be used not only for time, but also for EV cars, and you can also calculate the distance in fuel consumption. The traffic information is semi-real-time. We actually update our traffic tiles and APIs every minute. We also have accidents information and road closure and work information on top of the map, and that is updated every 2 minutes. So with the traffic APIs, you can definitely see where traffic is happening. But I also told you that we have our routing APIs, and the routing APIs actually use also the traffic information for the routing. So if you do routing from point A to point B, and there is traffic in the road, in the path what you have calculated, that is also used within our APIs and logic. You can enable or disable that, and you can do also routing predictions for the future, and we have historical traffic information, so we also can use that historical traffic information for the routing when it is needed. I told you that we have also weather APIs. The weather APIs is not only the current conditions, the predictions for current conditions, but also predictions for the future and also historical information. But we have also, for example, air quality, we have tropical storms, and we have some alerting for severe weather if that it is needed. And we have the weather tiles on top of the map, so it can be used by an API if you don't need a map and just want to show that to a user. And we can also show it on the map if that is needed. We have time zone APIs that can be used if you have longitude and latitude information. We give you actually the time what is currently on that specific point in the world to you. Really interesting to use that when you have customers around the world, maybe they're calling you and you have the location of where they're calling from, then you immediately also know what the exact time is for the specific user. We do also geolocation, and geolocation means that you have an IP address and want to transform that to a location. We give you back actually the location of the country where that person or traffic is coming from. So how do you get starting actually using Azure Maps? The first thing what you need is actually an Azure subscription. You can go to azure.com and actually sign up for a free Azure subscription. When you have an Azure subscription, or maybe you already have one, the next thing what you need to do is actually create a resource group that is just basically kind of a folder where you can put in resources. And one of the resources what you need, of course, is an Azure Maps account or Azure Maps resource, what is basically giving you access to all the APIs and services from Azure Maps when you have created that. So I want to show you how to do that. So I have already here the Azure portal, where you basically can create and manage your current Azure services. So I'm going to create a new services, and I'm going to search for Azure Maps. Select that one, and then I'm going to create an Azure Maps resource. Then basically I have a subscription. I need to select a resource group or create a new one. Let's call it demo. Then I also need to give the Azure Maps resource a name. So I can say demo maps. The name is actually only used for for yourself to know what kind of resource it was. Then you need to select the location, and then the location is actually not where the resource is deployed, but it is more used for our billing engine. So all the data for billing, for example, will stay in that area. So if you for example, coming from Europe and you select West Europe, then the billing information will be stayed also in West Europe. Also, the endpoint what is used for accessing the Azure Maps APIs and services is the one from Europe. That does not mean that Azure Maps is not available in Asia and other areas in around the world. Azure Maps is a global services. That has only to do actually with the compliancy of basically where user data is stored. You can also read a little bit more if you highlight the icon here. Then actually we are done. We select actually that we accept the terms and then we create the resource. What now happens is that we start creating an Azure Maps resource that we can use in our own applications. It is a global resource. Azure Maps is available worldwide, but it is not available for people within China or in South Korea. That are the two exceptions, but you can still see outside of those areas information of those countries, of course. So now the resource is almost ready, and in a couple of seconds we can actually explore a little bit what was created in this Azure subscription. So it is almost there. Go to resource. So now what is created is our demo maps, Azure Maps account. I can see all kinds of additional settings, but I will expand it a little bit because there are basically two settings that are really important. When you are starting with Azure Maps, then you need a subscription key or an Azure Maps key to access the APIs, and you can find that under the authentication tab. There you have basically a key what you can copy, and that key is basically used in all the API calls and when you create the map. There are also course rules what you can apply. So you can, for example, say if you have a specific website with a map and you don't want that map can be used and worked outside that specific website, you can specify course rules here so that it is only allowed to access Azure Maps from the specific website. So that are the two most important things here. Of course, when you are using Azure Maps, we have a monitoring and metrics what you can use to see the usage of Azure Maps. And if you have somehow an issue or need support, you can create actually a support ticket with our team. We have a dedicated Azure Maps support team available worldwide. So create a ticket if you have any issues. So let's jump back to the slides actually. No, this one. So what we now have is actually an Azure subscription. We have a resource group and we have created an Azure Maps account. The next thing is how I'm going to use that resource. So we can actually use the Azure Maps web control on a website or a mobile application and then use the subscription key to basically render the map. Or I can actually access Azure Maps directly by using one of the REST SDKs. And you can use that for .NET, Java, JavaScript, and of course Python. You can do that hardcore yourselves, or you can use one of our NPM packages actually. And we have also a library that can be used for the REST SDKs. And here I've selected the .NET version. And you see some additional sample code how to do that in .NET. If you are programming in JavaScript, you can actually use the maps control itself. And also, what if you don't want to use the NPM package, we have a CDN version of the same library available, and that is actually also what we're using in our sample website. So basically you only reference actually the JavaScript file and a style sheet, and those two links make it possible to use Azure Maps within your application. But there is also a third option. So if you do not want to use Azure Maps Web Control, you're also allowed to use a third-party map control where possible. Now, I showed you that you need a subscription key to access the Azure Maps resources and services. But yeah, how secure is that? My key is maybe on a public website. Everyone can steal or use my key. I don't want basically that. So how can I protect or hide my key? Now, luckily, we have more options than we had in the past. So the Azure Maps key is a really simple way to get started, but I will say never use it in production. We have actually something else that is called managed identities, and then you can work with tokens. And when you work with tokens that are basically short-lived and they have limited access, then you can really restrict how users can access your website and also use Azure Maps on your website or in your mobile application. Only that, of course, needs a little bit more backend APIs, what you need to create actually. We have written a blog post about that, how to set this up. Maybe the architecture picture looks in the beginning a little bit complex, but it is really not complex. When you go to the blog site, let's see where I have that. I have written an Azure Maps blog about authentication, and actually in that blog I will start really simple with an application using just an Azure Maps key, and that actually will create a simple website with a map on it without any authentication except for the key itself. Then I basically explain how to set it up for using with managed identities, so that you have the whole infrastructure and also that you can use the Azure Maps tokens for your website. And then I can go a step further, and then actually I'm going to add also basically a login process on top of the website, so that if you have an internal application that is not accessible for let's say external people, you even can protect it on that way, and then you have the whole picture of protecting Azure Maps, protecting your website, all with authentication, and you don't need any keys anymore because it's all managed identity. So that's a cool blog post to follow if you need that type of protection. Nope, this one I need. And then talking about Azure Maps pricing. When you talk about Azure Maps pricing, it is pay for what you use. You don't have upfront cost. The bill is on a monthly basis. So you don't need a contract for a year. It is just create an Azure Maps account. You use it maybe for one day and then you basically stop using it. You only pay for what you have used. But there is also something else. We have also free transactions every month. So if you stay below the free transactions, you can even use Azure Maps for development and small websites for free. You only pay for everything that is above the free tier. And actually I want to show you that on our website. So we have an Azure Maps pricing website where you see basically the different services what we have in Azure Maps. You see the amount of transactions what you get free every month, what you can consume without any cost. And if you consume more than, for example, 5,000 tiles in a month, then you basically pay $4.50 per 1,000 transactions. So that is a good thing to know. And then a lot of customers asking, how can I calculate actually the pricing? Now we have actually an Azure calculator. In the Azure calculator, you can actually add Azure Maps to the calculator. So it will be added to the bottom of the calculator. And there you can say, maybe I have 10,000 tiles, what I consume on a monthly basis. And then you know actually the price what we calculate for that. Of course, this is just the list price. If you already have an Azure account, a subscription, and have maybe an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, there can be some discounts involved. Then you need to log in to the Azure calculator to see your specific pricing. So it's currently only showing you the list pricing, but if you want to have your own pricing, you basically need a login there. Another thing is, I'm always talking about not about API calls, but I'm talking about transactions. So what is basically a transaction? We have in our documentation, and I can share you the link later on, understanding of Azure Maps transactions. There we explain actually what a transaction is. So for example, if I have a tile on a map, then I only pay, or I get actually 15 tiles, but it will cost me only one transaction. So you can have multiple API calls, but it will still calculate only one transaction for that calculation. So if you're using the pricing calculator and you're going to fill in the X amount of API calls, then you're getting a way higher number than that for a year, what we are basically not going to charge you, because you need to divide that by 15 if you're talking about tile request, for example. Now let's go back to the slide. So I talked about pay for what you use, no upfront costs, monthly basis. We have free transactions. You have seen the pricing calculator and the price list. And also understanding what a transaction is. If you somehow also using Azure Maps in Power BI, you don't need to have an Azure subscription. The Azure Maps visual in Power BI is already included in the license of Power BI, so there are no additional costs involved in that sense. So thank you for listening and watching to this session about Azure Maps. If you need additional information, you can follow the links on top on this website. And of course, if you have additional questions, please answer them in the chat, in the comments, and we try to answer them where we can. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you for tuning into this webinar. I hope you found it useful and feel enabled now to start using Azure Maps. No one knows mapping like grey matter, and we have an entire team to help you with your mapping needs. I've put our contact information on the screen, and feel free to contact us via email or give us a call. Bye.